Welcome, everyone. I am Bulwark Senior Editor Ben Parker here with our friend and frequent contributor, Will Selber. Will, you had a piece up in the Bulwark called Trump Manages to Spoil One of Our Few Remaining Sacred Spaces. Before I get into the details of what happened and we can launch off, Will, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, man, it's always a pleasure to be on, man. Thanks for having me.
So you wrote about this kerfuffle that happened at Arlington National Cemetery when Donald Trump with some of his campaign retinue were there for an event. And apparently an employee of Arlington National Cemetery tried to prevent the campaign from filming in Section 60 of the cemetery. So let's walk through this. You go through this in the piece. First of all, at the most basic level, what is Section 60?
Section 60 is a part of Arlington National Cemetery where overwhelmingly the people who are buried there were killed in Iraq and Afghanistan. Not everybody, but the vast majority in that section. So it is one of the few. It's one of the places where you're going to actually see, if you go there, people grieving, openly weeping. So it is out of all the places in the cemetery, obviously it's there's different levels sacred, but like you're seeing a civil war or something like that, it's a little bit different. But when you're there, it is a whole different level of somberness, and it's just a very sacred place. It's one of my. I don't take a lot of people there. I go probably every time I go to DC, which is often, and I usually go by myself, or I'll take people so they can experience that, because I think it's important to see it. But if you're going to visit it, it's important to follow the rules.
Yes, this is a place where you're not just seeing people visiting a random grave or the grave of someone famous or the grave of their grandfather or great-grandfather. It's sometimes their husband, their father, their children. A very raw part of the cemetery, which is why there are special rules about not doing politics there, and we'll get to that a little later. So you set the scene for us. You told us about not Trump's visit to Section 60, but you took a couple of Afghan friends of yours there. So tell us about Hamid and Shirzad.
Yeah, so Hamid was my Pashto instructor 10 years ago. He was a SIV, Special Immigrant Visa Afghan, who became an American citizen. Now he works in a Fortune 500 company. He's married, has kids, so he's an American citizen. I took him. He had never been before, and he wanted to go. And then I took Shirzad, who is a former first lieutenant in the Afghan National Army, who came here very recently during the fall of Afghanistan. And so he had never been before. And so I took the opportunity to take them because they both wanted to realize, I think, to remember some of the things about the war in Afghanistan and to remind themselves of the sacrifices, even though it didn't work out the way we wanted it. They wanted to pay their respects to the Americans who died trying to give them their freedom.
Yeah. And you talk about how you told them about the special somberness of the place they were visiting and how much respect they had for the people who were buried there, again, who had given everything in service of our country and in service of theirs, right? Both, and how much that meant to them. So let's go back to this Trump story. So NPR originally reported it that there was an altercation between Trump's staff and this employee of Arlington National Cemetery who had tried to prevent them from filming in Section 60. So first of all, let's just, before we get into what the Trump campaign said and what the Army then said, let's just get into when you, as a veteran of Iraq and Afghanistan, as someone who's visited Section 60 many times, when you heard this story, that there was some sort of altercation between the Trump campaign and the staff at Arlington, what was your initial response? What went through your head?
I was very depressed. I don't get, different things anger me. For some veterans, that it angers them, it makes them furious, and I understand that. For me, I was just kind of depressed at the state of American politics, that one of the two major parties, one that I've historically voted for, has now nominated somebody for the third straight time after losing an election, who just, I think, has demonstrated an inability to comprehend service, to understand honor, and understand just the basic level of etiquette on how you should carry yourself as an American citizen, and then also, I mean, as a former head of state. And I just think that I would expect more from a former president than to act like that at Arlington National Cemetery. He wasn't a candidate, which I would have been maybe a little bit more forgiving. This is a man who has served as president and should understand the military, but has still, after 4 years, seems not to be able to grasp some of it.
Yeah, that's for certain, especially when you look at the statement that his campaign released, saying that the person who tried to stop the campaign from filming in Section 60, which, by the way, is against the rules, right? That is the thing.
Yes.
Arlington National Cemetery was just trying to enforce the rules. We'll get into that later. So for trying to enforce the rules, the Trump campaign spokesman said this person was, quote, clearly suffering from a mental health episode. You even want to comment on that? I mean, what did they say?
Yeah, I mean, look, I have no idea what happened, and I just, if the employee was simply trying to enforce the rules, then that if she's going to have a mental health episode, I have them all the time. I would be having one too if I saw somebody filming at Arlington National Cemetery and who didn't have the proper permission and using it for political gain. I'm sure that caused quite a reaction, because the people who usually work there, and I've had limited interactions with them, and I've gone all the time, they've been nothing but respectful. When I took my two Afghan friends, the majority of the tourists were going to take the trolley. They're going to go to the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, and so the lady, one of the groundskeeper, that's the way to the train. That's the way to the train. I said, I'm going to Section 60, and she just said, God bless you. That was it. And so that's because there is an honor to work there, and they do feel like honored to take care of those places. It's might sound silly to some people, but they feel like, they feel like they're taking care of America's heroes.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. I was once involved in one of these volunteer operations that goes and puts flags down on Memorial Day at every grave in Arlington.
Yeah, wreaths and flags.
And people just volunteer to do it because these people deserve to have their graves taken care of. They gave everything. It's the least we can do. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I think the statement the Army put out in response to that claim is worth reading at length. So buckle in for a sec. They say, this is this official statement from the Army, which runs the National Cemetery. Participants in the August 26th ceremony and the subsequent Section 60 visit were made aware of federal laws, Army regulations, and DoD policies, which clearly prohibit political activities on ceremony grounds. An Arlington National Cemetery employee who attempted to ensure adherence to these rules was abruptly pushed aside. Consistent with the decorum expected at the cemetery, this employee acted with professionalism and avoided further disruption. So that makes it sound like they were enforcing the rules, which are there for a reason, and that employee was pushed aside. What did they do wrong?
Yeah, it's just it's kind of mind-boggling. But at this point, I'm not shocked by it. I just this is a pattern I think that we've seen over the last however many years he's been involved in American life. So this is part of the experience that the push boundaries, but now we've hit this the last sacred place. I mean, it's really depressing because it's the one place you go to and all the things that you carry, the identities and all the things that you are, you leave that behind you and you just go there and remember like how special it is to live here because these men and women gave their lives for it. And that's all it should be about for people, not trying to capitalize on it.
Yeah, that's right. Will, you also write very movingly in this piece about some of the graves you visit in Section 60 and some of the people you know who are buried there. So why don't you tell us a little bit about who those people are?
Yeah, so I have two friends buried in Arlington National Cemetery, who I usually always visit when I go there. Airman First Class Leonard Chavis, who's a turret gunner who was killed by a mobile sniper team in 2006 in Baghdad while we were training the Iraqi police. And then a friend of mine, his name is Captain Jesse Milton III, who was a Marine. He was actually, I believe he was a communications officer, but he volunteered to go and train the Afghan National Army in 2008. And he drove into a one-way valley, which most of them are. You go one way in, you go one way out. And they were waiting for him, and they hit his vehicle with a double-stacked anti-tank mine, and it killed everybody in the vehicle. Those are the two friends that I go visit. I usually also see like some other people for other friends. I will go and, pay my respects on behalf of other people while I'm there as well.
Yeah, you write very movingly about them, and you included pictures you have of their headstones at Arlington. So we have one other happier note that we want to end on, but
Yeah.
before we get there, let's just really hammer this home. Why is it that filming a campaign ad at Section 60 where your friends are buried is against the rules? And why is it so destructive to break those rules, to use those graves in your political messaging in your campaign for president? Like at the very basic level, why do we have these rules in the first place?
So that not everybody just goes out there and starts filming ads. I mean, because there's a long history and tradition of using American soldiers as political props, and both parties are very guilty of that throughout their entire history. But there is, a line that dead soldiers maybe is not the place to go and film an ad because they never agreed to it. No matter if you have somebody who said that you could do it or not, the rest of the people, the men and women who were killed and buried there, their families didn't say that. And so you're taking not only just you're dishonoring a part of that cemetery, and by the whole thing, it's just really gross. And I find it just very sad that nobody in that entire campaign apparatus at any point in time thought maybe this isn't a good idea.
Yeah, I want to read to you back some of the lines from your piece because I think they're so powerful. The people who gave their lives didn't swear an oath to give all to a party or a candidate. They swore to protect the Constitution, and they sacrificed to protect this country. Their sacrifice is one of the last reminders we have that there exists an American project that is bigger than parties and tribes and campaigns, and that it's worth fighting, dying, and even killing for. I think it's absolutely right. And, I'd only add that the people who are buried under those headstones, those beautiful white gleaming headstones, they don't get a say, right? They have all sorts of different political opinions. Some of them would have been thrilled to be in a Trump ad. Some of them wouldn't have. Sure. And they don't get a say.
Sure.
And so it's absolutely taking advantage of these people who, if they hadn't signed up and taken that oath, would have been here with us today. It's taking advantage of them to say, well, you're now going to support me for president from beyond the grave. It's abusing them. It's just abuse.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
Okay, so let's talk. I'm so sorry. I'm going to let you talk about your interpreter. There was a big story about you and about your friend in the USA today. So let's take a
I think a lot of the Bulwark readers will remember Ahmadullah Karimi, who was my last combat interpreter that I got out of Afghanistan. I've gotten a lot out even before the fall. But he was one that the Bulwark, a lot of the Bulwark community donated to his GoFundMe campaign, which what JVL put in his triad, and I was hoping to get $7,000, which would have been more than enough just to put him in a safe house. He was in Pakistan, and I think within like 24 hours, it was at 35,000 or something like that. And I actually had to turn it off because we didn't need that much money, and I felt bad taking it. So redirecting it to other worthy causes. But the article is about him, and I think the assistance that me and some of the people that served along with me were able to give him, and now he is in Vermont, and he just got his green card this week, which is very fast. So he is probably about less than, I think it's 5 years or so from becoming an American citizen. But now that he has a green card, he is has legal permanent residence here. So it's a big deal for him and his family, and that wouldn't have happened without the Bulwark.
Yeah, it's a very happy story. By the way, he's not the only Afghan who helped the United States, who the Bulwark community helped get out. I know a couple others too who are now in Oregon. It's a great story every time. They're going to be great Americans. Will, you've written a lot about this, about getting Afghans out, about the people we've tried to help, about the people we've left behind. But if people want to start, the piece you have in the Bulwark now is Trump manages to spoil one of our few remaining sacred spaces. You also today have another piece about the Afghanistan War Commission and whether or not they're going to have the political maneuvering room and the will to tell the truth. So people should go check out Will Selber, more YouTube videos, more articles in the Bulwark. Will, thanks for joining me.
Thanks as always, Ben. Have a great one.